Tonight, at the president's first cabinet meeting, it was all about Mr. Trump and Elon Musk, the tech billionaire defending Doge's efforts to slash billions in spending, but noting mistakes, too. It comes as a government memo is telling agencies to prepare for mass layoffs after President Trump suggested the U.S. could redevelop Gaza into a Riviera. The controversial AI video he posted showing him dancing at a building with a sign for Trump Gaza. The measles outbreak turns deadly. An unvaccinated child is the first known death should people get booster shots. And what Health Secretary RFK Jr. is saying. The twist in the Adnan Syed case, convicted, freed, but his future in question again. My exclusive with the Baltimore prosecutor who isn't abandoning Syed's conviction. Would you bring this case today based on the evidence you have today?
Based on the evidence that we have today, yes, we would.
No doubt.
No doubt.
The future of the road, a network of chargers, was supposed to power EVs across the country. But now the White House has pulled the plug. What it means for drivers.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. Elon Musk was the headliner at President Trump's first cabinet meeting today. The president surrounded by those at the seat of power in his administration. But it was Musk who held the floor, defending his work at Doge as the president's budget cutter-in-chief, saying it was the president who encouraged him to be more aggressive, warning the country is heading for bankruptcy and admitting mistakes while promising to fix them. Meantime, given a chance to inject some clarity into whether federal workers could actually lose their jobs for failing to respond to that email asking employees to account for their accomplishments, President Trump instead answered with another loosely veiled threat, while Musk tried to downplay the email as a pulse check. It's where we start here in Washington tonight with NBC's Garrett Hake.
Tonight, President Trump converting his first cabinet meeting into a rolling press conference.
Illegal border crossings have plummeted.
Touting progress.
We're cutting down the size of government. We have to. We're bloated. We're sloppy. We have a lot of people that aren't doing their job.
And immediately turning the spotlight not on a cabinet member, but on Elon Musk, head of his Department of Government Efficiency, to defend his controversial directive that all federal workers email a list of 5 accomplishments from last week or face termination.
I think that email perhaps was best interpreted as a performance review, but actually it was a pulse check review. If you have a pulse into your neurons, you can reply to an email. This is, I think not a high bar.
Musk was surrounded by several cabinet members who had pushed back on his order and instructed employees not to respond. Musk insisting that was fine.
We're going to send another email. But our goal is not to be capricious or unfair. The email could simply be, what I'm working on is too sensitive or classified to describe. Like literally just, that would be sufficient.
The president publicly backing Musk.
Hey, Elon, let the cabinet speak just for a second. Are you very unhappy with Elon? If you are, we'll throw him out of here.
And warning, federal workers who've not yet responded remain at risk of losing their jobs.
Those million people that haven't responded, though, Elon, they are on the bubble. Now, maybe they don't exist. Maybe we're paying people that don't exist.
It comes as a new budget office memo obtained by NBC News instructs federal agencies to prepare for mass layoffs as the Trump administration focuses on reducing federal spending.
If we don't do this, America will go bankrupt.
While Musk acknowledging Doge made mistakes, including cutting funding for Ebola prevention.
When we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. We restored the Ebola prevention immediately, and there was no interruption.
The president also making headlines on Ukraine, revealing President Zelensky will visit the White House Friday for the signing of an agreement to jointly develop the country's valuable rare earth minerals to recoup billions in U.S. aid sent to Ukraine. The president suggesting the deal would form its own kind of security guarantee for Ukraine.
It's this sort of automatic security because nobody's going to be messing around with our people when we're there.
And saying for the first time, Russian President Putin will have to make concessions.
He will. He's going to have to.
Vice President Vance heading off a question about what exactly those concessions would be.
We're not going to do the negotiation in public with the American media. He's doing the job of a diplomat.
The president also speaking about the Middle East after posting this AI-generated video featuring his name and face in a future redeveloped Gaza, a reference to his controversial plan to take over and rebuild it opposed by key Arab allies. The president today slamming Hamas for how it's handled the latest release of dead hostages as the ceasefire deal moves into a potential second phase.
This is a vicious group of people, and Israel's going to have to decide what they're doing.
And Garrett, late today, President Trump signed another executive order regarding DOGE. What did it say?
Lester, this new order is aimed at cutting more spending and mandates, with some exceptions, that employees' government credit cards are now frozen for 30 days and that non-essential travel has to be justified and publicly posted when possible. Lester?
All right, Garrett Haig, thank you. House Republicans delivered a last-second win for President Trump, narrowly adopting a new budget framework with deep cuts. But tonight, Democrats arguing the planned spending cuts go too far. Ryan Nobles now with late details.
Tonight, Republicans are one step closer to helping President Trump kick his 100-day agenda into high gear.
We've already rolled up our sleeves, and we're working on it beginning this morning.
In a big win for President Trump, House Republicans adopting their version of the budget, but barely. Every Democrat voting no and pulling out all the stops to try and sink the GOP proposal. One rushing to the floor after recovering from surgery. Another, a brand new mom on maternity leave, flying across the country to cast her ballot.
He's only 4 weeks old.
But Republicans found a way to get it done. President Trump personally reaching out to 4 conservative members. 3 ended up voting yes.
The president assured me that he would work towards cuts. He's never lied to me.
The House proposal calls for $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and slashes $1.5 to $2 trillion in spending. Democrats arguing Republicans cannot cut that much spending without cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Will have a direct impact on rural hospitals, on nursing homes, and on basic health care for people with low incomes.
But President Trump promising the cuts won't come from those core social programs.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that.
The House budget plan is largely symbolic at this point, with GOP leaders going to the White House to discuss a path forward and Senate Republicans still calling for changes. Lester?
Okay, Ryan, thank you. In Texas, an unvaccinated child has died from measles. The first death from the disease in a decade comes amid a growing outbreak in Texas. Priscilla Thompson has more.
A fast-moving measles outbreak turning deadly in Texas. Health officials in Lubbock confirming an unvaccinated school-aged child has died.
We are now seeing a very serious consequence of what happens when we have measles in our community.
Sending shockwaves through West Texas, especially among those like Ben Ham, whose 18-month-old foster daughter is immunocompromised.
If she's around a cold, any type of sniffles, and she's not protected, she could be in the ICU tonight.
What's up? Ham earlied up her second dose of the measles vaccine, as cases in Texas climb to at least 124, with 18 patients hospitalized, officials say. Almost all babies and children who are unvaccinated or awaiting their second dose. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a vaccine skeptic, responding to the outbreak for the first time today.
We put out a post on it yesterday, and we're going to continue to follow it. It's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
Dr. Anna Montanez is on the front lines in Lubbock. She says while cases occur annually, she hasn't seen them this widespread.
Do we get it in patches every year? Maybe that is true, but it is in areas where there is no vaccination. There's low vaccination rates, if you will.
Measles cases have been reported in 8 states, including 9 in neighboring New Mexico. Officials have not said they're connected. Experts say those born before 1957 likely have natural immunity because of how widespread the disease was. But those vaccinated between 1957 and 89, before a live virus was used or when only one shot was given, might consider a booster. As tonight, parents here hope this outbreak will soon be over.
And Priscilla, I know there are new fears tonight about a wider spread of cases in Texas.
That's right, Lester. Health officials say a person who unknowingly had measles traveled to San Marcos and San Antonio, potentially exposing people at 2 major universities and restaurants. Officials are now urging unvaccinated folks in those areas to monitor for symptoms. Lester?
Priscilla, thank you. Today, the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture announced a new strategy to combat the bird flu and bring down the price of eggs. Our Aaron McLaughlin joins us now with more. Aaron, how would it work?
Well, Lester, the new billion-dollar strategy was published in a Wall Street Journal op-ed. It includes enhancing biosecurity, exploring the use of vaccines and therapeutics, and temporary import options to reduce egg costs. Rollins says the new plan will be paid for, at least in part, by the Doge cuts. The strategy was announced the same week the USDA issued a new report predicting egg prices could jump more than 40% this year. Keep in mind the average wholesale price of a dozen eggs is already more than $8. Experts tell me while the strategy is a good start, there's no quick fix to resolve this crisis. Lester.
Aaron McLaughlin, thank you. In 60 seconds, the major court battle in the Adnan Syed case. My exclusive with the prosecutor who isn't abandoning the conviction as his future remains in legal limbo. Next. In Baltimore, a critical court hearing in a murder case that spawned a must-hear podcast. Adnan Syed asked a court to reduce his sentence for the murder of his former girlfriend, preventing a potential return to prison. The top prosecutor telling me why he now opposes overturning the case. Adnan Syed in court today, his freedom tenuous. In the latest twist, Ivan Bates, the new Baltimore City state's attorney, declaring that after an exhaustive review, his office has withdrawn its motion to vacate Syed's conviction for the murder of his high school girlfriend, Hae Min Lee, in 1999. That means Syed's conviction will stand. I spoke with Bates exclusively.
We took every single piece and took it apart, put it back together, and we're very confident in the jury's decision back in 2000.
After 23 years in prison, Syed's conviction was vacated by a judge, and he was freed in 2022, only to have his conviction reinstated months later. Syed allowed, however, to remain free. He has always maintained his innocence.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the murder of Hae.
National interest in the case exploded, in part because of the podcast Serial.
Was he so hurt that he decided to kill her?
18-year-old Hae Min Lee disappeared on January 13th.
And an HBO documentary series. Syed's lawyers argue prosecutors failed to turn over evidence favorable to Syed that could have affected the trial's outcome, a so-called Brady violation.
We looked at not just the Brady violation, but we looked at all the evidence.
Would you bring this case today based on the evidence you have today?
Based on the evidence that we have today, yes, we would.
Well, this seems like a little bit of a turnabout. In your opinion, I think back in 2018, you were holding that this case didn't meet the standards for prosecution, meaning that if you wanted to try to go to trial at that point, there wasn't enough.
Yes. Well, it is and it is in the sense that, back then we had certain information. We had part of the information there.
But Bates's office in court today supporting another potential path for Syed's permanent freedom, a sentence reduction allowed under Maryland law called the JRA for certain juvenile offenders.
We believe that Mr. Syed has been a model prisoner while he's been in the institution, that he's truly rehabilitated himself.
So you would fully support his freedom based on the JRA now?
1,000% we do. And I've come out and said that.
Not on a Brady violation, though.
Not on the Brady violation. We're not going to vacate the conviction. Vacating the conviction says it did not that he is not the individual that was committed this crime.
Today's hearing including testimony from the victim's family who oppose Syed's request for relief, making this plea to Judge Jennifer Schiffer.
It's my sister who is the true victim here. And I hope that she will make the right decision of denying the reduction of sentence.
Syed told the judge today that he doesn't want to cause more pain to Hae Min Lee's family and vowed to build a meaningful life. The judge said she'll rule soon on whether to reduce his sentence. Still ahead here tonight, a huge roadblock for EVs. Why an ambitious plan to build thousands of charging stations now has officials pumping the brakes. A record number of electric vehicles were sold in the U.S. last year, but charging them all remains a challenge. Brian Chung reports on how plans to build a network of chargers is now on hold.
At Tom Hesser Nissan in Dunmore, Pennsylvania.
This is the 24 Nissan Leaf.
Salesman Spencer Asman says drivers he meets are getting range anxiety about buying an electric car.
People just get nervous with the charging times, and so if we had a larger infrastructure in the country, I think that would solve a massive issue.
A recent survey found that the share of car buyers saying they were unlikely to buy an EV jumped by 10 points last year, as car buyers like Ron Fiddler say an EV isn't for them right now.
If I'm going to go to Maine, I can't make it to Maine on one charge. I know that I have to stop somewhere along the line and charge it again.
As a prescription for range anxiety, the Biden administration pushed $5 billion in federal funds to build out a national network of EV chargers like this one here in Pittston, Pennsylvania.
Charging stations will be up and easy to find as gas stations are now.
The National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program promised 500,000 public charging ports by 2030, but to date, it's opened just 268, spread across 60 stations nationwide.
We will revoke the electric vehicle mandate.
The Trump administration pulling the plug on the program for now, ordering states to suspend building new charging stations, in order that could ultimately benefit Elon Musk's Tesla, which has the country's largest private network of fast charging stations and now could stand to face less competition. Tesla did not reply to our request for comment. As an EV driver, would you like to see more stations like this around the area?
Of course, yeah.
Tonight, EV owners who had been betting on a built-out national network left frustrated.
You're dependent on these high-speed chargers, and if one or two of them go down, you're waiting in line. And yeah, I get anxious over that.
Brian Chung, NBC News, Pittston, Pennsylvania.
That's Nightly News for this Wednesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.